Hey, what is up you guys, and welcome to another video. In today's video I wanted to do my highly requested glass sword book review. Spoiler free book review. Let's jump into it. So if some of you didn't know, Glass Sword was one of my highly anticipated books for the year of 2016, and it was actually the first book that I finished in 2016 because I finished it yesterday, which was the 5th of January. So I've already read my most anticipated book of this year, like 5 days into the year. But I figured I would sit down, let you guys know what I thought. So I guess this is kind of like a very obvious disclaimer, but if you have not read Red Queen yet, you probably shouldn't watch this video. So if you haven't read Red Queen, probably click off of this video, read Red Queen, and then come back. Unless you want to be spoiled, then by all means please continue watching. So Glass Sword picks up basically where Red Queen left off. So in general, Glass Sword, I would say that, I mean, you guys know how much I love Red Queen. It's probably one of my favourite YA dystopian, probably one of my favourite books of all time. I loved Red Queen. I loved it for the plot twist, for the betrayal. In general, I personally think that I like Glass Sword as a separate novel. I like Red Queen for very specific things, and I like Glass Sword for also very different reasons. And I think that's entirely great. I mean, I loved Glass Sword just as much as I loved Red Queen, but for very different reasons. I think Glass Sword is very personal to me. It's a lot more, it explores the diversity between like the social standings of red and silvers, because you know from the first book that silvers are definitely placed on a hierarchy and Mare is a red, and we know this much, but you don't actually get to experience it. You don't actually get to visually really see all that much of the kind of red society and how reds live, I guess. And I think Glass Sword is really personal to Mare. It's a lot more of a personal endeavour and a personal kind of journey that she goes on. Her mentality changes catastrophically after, you know, the betrayal with Maven and things like that, and you can see Mare really starting to evolve as a character. And I don't know, I love Mare as a heroine because she's brave and she's badass, but she's also, I think she's selfish. I mean, Mare, not even just specifically in Glass Sword, but throughout both books, I feel like Mare is quite selfish sometimes, and she has a kind of blunt mentality towards some things. But within Glass Sword, I think Victoria goes more into how Mare's actually feeling, and it's nice to actually be reminded that she's not this monstrous creature that her actions may portray her to be, I guess. And I also think Victoria does this in Glass Sword in a really personal kind of way, so it's not always said in monologue, or it's not always said in the narrative that like Mare doesn't physically like break down and she's like, I'm finding this really tough, like Maven betrayed me, blah blah blah. It's done through like the guilt and just the feeling of dread, and I feel like you really feel that from the page, and you're like, well shit, she's feeling really bad about all these people that she's killed. It's kind of reassuring to know that Mare still, you know, she still suffers from, you know, human fault, because, you know, she's not red, but she's not silver, and that's not just the colour of her blood or these powers that she's been given, it's also her mentality. You know, she really starts to feel like she kind of belongs somewhere within Glass Sword, but also at the same point she's still very different from people that she's beginning to kind of relate to. Something else that I thought was really interesting about Glass Sword was Cal, and I love Cal as a character. I think he is ruthless. I also think he's quite brutal, and he's very silver. I mean, he's silver royalty, and within this book you really see him change. And I wouldn't necessarily say that he becomes less silver in his mentality, but I think it's even more traumatic and more disturbing and kind of more heartbreaking that Cal, although Mare is having this massive trouble with finding where she belongs and coming to terms with everything that is happening, Cal is even more lost than Mare because he's been, you know, he's lost his father and he is wrecked with guilt more than what Mare is. He was forced to kill his own father by the Queen, who he hates, and Maven, his brother, has entirely betrayed him. So whilst it is heartbreaking and Mare has to come to terms with the fact that Maven has betrayed her, I think it's more heartbreaking that Cal has been torn from something that he's always been Silver. I mean, he's a good Silver, I mean, compared to like Evangeline or someone. I don't even think I'm ever going to be ready to talk about Maven as a character in this book because, yeah, let's just not go there. One thing I will say is that I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but I wanted more Evangeline in this book, which I'm sad about because I like the old characters that we get to see, and Evangeline is so badass. She's just such a bitch and I love her, and I'm not supposed to love her, but I do. And there are so many more characters brought in to Glass Sword, and they're all very, very, very unique. I will stress that. You guys will know what I'm talking about when you read Glass Sword. In terms of the actual plot, it kind of a tiny bit dragged in the middle for me personally. It's not to say that it was bad, it was kind of just, I don't know, maybe it was the time that I was reading it, I have no idea. But the ending, let me tell you something about the ending of this book. Victoria Aveyard has, I don't know how she manages to do things with the endings of her books like that, but she does. And with Red Queen, I was literally like, just, my mind was being blown, and I was like, I wonder what's going to happen at the ending of Glass Sword. And then there is this one scene and you're like, oh shit, and then it calms down a little bit. And then there's another scene and you're like, oh shit. Then it calms down a bit. And then like the last couple of pages, of course, you're like, oh shit. So there are like 3 oh shit moments in this book. And I'm like, it was the ending of this book. I would say the ending of Glass Sword may be better than the ending of Red Queen. Anything that Victoria writes is just the action sequences. Like, I love these superhuman power. Glass Sword takes this whole aspect of supernatural and superhuman powers and all of that jazz to a whole different level, because it's kind of, you've contained everything in Red Queen, and then there's like Mare outside the box, and then you come into Glass Sword and you're like, holy crap, there was so much potential for this supernatural aspect, and Victoria has definitely taking advantage of that. She's done so well writing this book. I mean, her writing is absolutely phenomenal. I still managed to connect with a lot of the characters because even though the majority of them aren't human, or like aren't reds or whatever, they still, you know, they still process emotion and loss and heartbreak and devastation and humour and all of that, and it's really nice for Mare and Cal and all of these different types of people to be surrounded by people like Shade, I guess, and Killorn and Farley, and very human people. If you're contemplating picking up Glass Sword because you don't think it will live up to Red Queen or anything like that, I highly recommend this. I mean, this is probably my second favourite book ever. Thank you guys so much for watching. Once again, thank you so much to Orion for sending me an arc of Glass Sword, and I will see you in my next one, guys. Bye!